right? I'm on the Sci-Fi Express lane. Y'all already know. You already know. About to express myself. I talk a lot of sci-fi. I talk sci-fi in everything. And everything, speculative fiction, you got it. And I was talking to a guy yesterday on social media about this backlash to dude, the black blonde-haired dreadlock dude in the Game of Thrones prequel HBO series. This supposedly takes place ahead of the Game of Thrones, and it is more diverse than the Game of Thrones was. Game of Thrones had Jason Momoa, who is Hawaiian, as a brown tribe in the original Game of Thrones. And they were one of the first ones to be eliminated. So after that, the series was really all white. And I was one of the people who said, because of the brutality in Game of Thrones, I mean, they're doing all types of stuff in Game of Thrones. It's damn near American Horror Story in medieval times, right? And I said, I don't really need no black people in that world because it's too brutal. So today I'm talking about why we don't need no black people in Game of Thrones. Now, I really just want to, I'll use Game of Thrones as an example, but what I really want to just talk about is sort of historical misimpressions, you know, because why I don't want black people in Game of Thrones, and by the way, it's too late. They already got black people in there, and dude is complaining because he's getting backlash for being rich, and they're like, how does he have a throne? He's black, you know. And sometimes I think they do go over the top with their black characters, and you know, they make a, you know, we have this thing called the magic Negro effect, and that's when they, you know, want to put a black character in there so bad they make dudes stronger than everybody else, you know, in there, or female, you know, next thing you know, she's Miss Marvel, you know, Captain Marvel. They're like, damn, who can beat her? She's like Superman, you know. But that's a real thing, you know. They do Wakanda, the most powerful nation on earth. Golly, all we wanted was a little bit of black people in there, and that's about it. You didn't have to give us the best, you know. But I mean, some people are like, we'll take it, you know. And you know, the backlash that comes from that is really hard, you know, when they say, yo, this was unnecessary, you know, why you do this? And the messed up thing is, it's all fake, it's all made up, and it shouldn't really get on anybody's nerves, but it does. And that's the same reason why I didn't want any black people in Game of Thrones or in fiction. I always worry about the analogies and the misrepresentations. Like there are clear connections between characters and tribes in European history. Same thing with Lord of the Rings, right? They are definitely inspired by true historical events. However, that said, it's all fiction. The problem is many people blur the lines between fiction and reality. Not to mention big time misrepresentations have scorned some people, not just humans, but even take Jaws on what Jaws did to sharks, to great white sharks particularly, especially now when you see videos where people are touching the noses of great whites, you know, practically dancing with them in the ocean. You know, you're like, dang, what did I think a great white would do? I thought it was just an endless carnivorous eating machine. And to be honest, yeah, they may be really dangerous, no doubt. But shoot, look at lions. You see the lions laying with people, being big cats. That's all they are. Same thing with the tribes and people of Earth. Certain tribes and certain cultures had characteristics, yes, but did they all do the same things? No. When we look at Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, we know that they worship the earth. They practice a belief that they came from earth. Were they all perfect? No. But did they all have the same imperfections? Also, no. So certain things that certain tribes and cultures did, that's what they did. They have to own it. Yes, you have Incas, Mayans, but they're not all the same, and they're not Cherokee, Navajo, and Cree. You understand? So yeah, you can say, oh yes, the Incas did this, the Mayans did this, but you can't put what the Mayans did on the Navajo. You can't put what the Mayans and Incans did on the Cherokee or the Seminole or these other tribes that we know. These are just the big ones that I'm naming. But no, we didn't. So we know the Cherokee and the Navajo and the Apache had a relationship where they didn't Game of Thrones each other. So to throw a Native American, Indigenous American tribe into Game of Thrones where they would castrate each other, tie brothers and sisters up to wheels of torture is inaccurate. It's actually wrong, So for me to see a black tribe in Game of Thrones, first of all, black people aren't but 400 years old. Jamaican people may be 300 or something years old. And anybody in the Caribbean, they're not an old tribe of people. They may have merengue, salsa, Haitian pâtés, and all of that now, but that culture isn't but 300 to 400 years old. You go back past 400 years, they were African, they were Taino, they were Carib. Now the Carib and the Taino practices are not practiced anymore. They're practically as extinct as the Incas, right? I don't even think they have any remnants. I think the Taino tribe may have a few hand tools, but I don't think any of their buildings are left. I went to Indigenous Caribbean museum in Dominican Republic, and they were very informative, but everything was indoors, so they didn't have big buildings like the Acropolis. They didn't have big mounds like they have in St. Louis and along the Mississippi and Tuscaloosa and those places. So they didn't have those structures because the islands were small, and pretty sure that the people just lived, like the Seminole. I don't even know if the Seminole had mounds. So they're gone. So you go 400 years ago, those people were African. So when you get to the medieval times, which was around the fall of Rome, right, to the what do you call it? Beginning of the human trafficking across the Atlantic at around 1500, 1600. You see the fall of the monarchies, right? And they started becoming democratic, elected countries, and they started doing more of that. So that period in Africa, to put a black person in Game of Thrones, they would have to be African, right? And so for that period in Africa, you're dealing with a pre-colonial African. A pre-colonial African is not the African you see running Africa now. You don't see the breast flattening, the clitoris mutilation, which is really like the most horrible things you see Africans do to each other. They still don't, torture each other. Now they do throw tires around dudes and let them burn or whatever in the public, so that may be something. But how old is the tire? And that's it. That's it. You understand? And those are horrible. Don't get me wrong. Those are horrible practices, no doubt. But when it compares to the Iron Maiden, it compares to burning witches and women who just knew how to tell time because their menstruation, it's pale in comparison. It's pale in comparison to the brutality and inhumanity that you see as a vital and crucial component of Game of Thrones. The lack of uncivilized behavior on Game of Thrones is ridiculous. And if they were to put that on a culture like the Kemetic people, that is blasphemy. What am I talking about? Kemetic people were not perfect, but in comparison to the ignorance that was running around in Europe during medieval times, which led up to the daggone Black Plague, right? We're not going to talk about hygiene, right? It's blasphemy. They were perfect compared to the medieval times. You understand? These people didn't know how to store food, eat, and wash so much that they had a bacterial disease that practically took them out. There ain't no other culture have that. The level of incest, all types of stuff. No, they didn't have that, but that's what's rampant, and that's what makes Game of Thrones so entertaining. It draws from that real history of Europe. Now, medieval times. We're not talking about, modern times. No, Europe got it together now. I guess once they got past the inhumanity of slavery, but they got it better. They got it better now. They're doing much better now. But those medieval times, the dark years was real. And every culture didn't have a dark years. There ain't no dark years in the Native American, indigenous American tribes. They didn't have no dark years here in America. Are you kidding me? And we have recorded history going back to the times before the dark years in Europe. So, and if there was a parallel, they definitely weren't experiencing it at the same time. There was no dark years in Africa. It wasn't no dark years. Those countries and those cultures are still intact. So you can go back and see what the Ashanti did before colonialization. You can trace the Zulu tribe and their practices, their language. They can still read their early markings. We know so much about the Kemetic tribe that existed thousands of years. We know what they did. You understand? So yes, it was interesting, but what's interesting about Game of Thrones is the dumbness and stupid inhumanity that was practiced in Europe during the medieval times. And they have to own that. And that's what makes that show interesting. If they were to do a Game of Thrones in indigenous American tribes, it would be blasphemy because it's not historically referenceable. There's no way you can reference anything in Game of Thrones, torture devices, incest, inhumanity, to what you see and what we know about indigenous Americans. And mind you, their tribes are also still alive. Ain't but a few of them, there's a handful of them that are extinct, but the other tribes are so closely related to them that they can represent for them as well. So, nah, we don't have that problem. And that's a nutshell why I think representation in certain stories may not necessarily be important. Now, if you want to write some visitors coming from indigenous America and they got their morals intact and then they get corrupted when they get out to Game of Thrones, all right, that's possible. If you want to do that, you travel to a land in Africa. It was messed up because when they did come to Africa, it was so humane that they couldn't understand it. You read Christopher Columbus's early logs, it was like you had Ponce de Leon thinking it was a damn utopia. It was such a contrast, Christopher Columbus said these people are like animals. They're so friendly. It's like you coming up to a deer that's never seen another deer get shot or killed before. They're just so friendly. So that's the what you will get when you see, if you were to go back in time. So to represent those people as some type of ignorant, violent people is wrong. So I wouldn't want them in Game of Thrones because of what you would have to do to make them interesting in Game of Thrones, unless you just make them straight victims and nobody want to relive pre-slavery all over again. No way, because that's what they did to us. They was very violent and they did it to us. Now, Arabs is another story. So they were very much like the Europeans, but I don't know fully the bits and pieces of Arabian history. I do know that the Berbers had enslaved Europeans before they started enslaving Africans, and that the Arabs were part of that. I do know the Arabs had a very violent pre-Islamic history, and even during Islam, they still violent now. So I don't know many of their customs that were weeded out because of Islam. So I can't speak on that. I'll probably look into it a little bit further. But that's it. All right, so I'm out of here. Sci-Fi Express Lane. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm a little over. I got to work on that. But I've gone under time before. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Peace.